Hello and welcome to our final session, pardon me, of the Growth Lab for 2024. My name is Danielle Porter, and I am our Communications and Sales Manager at Leverage Lab. And we are here today to tell you a little bit more about the next year. What does the next year have in store? So we really appreciate all of you for coming today, and we know it's a busy time of year, so we promise to keep it brief but insightful. And we really appreciate those of you that have joined us for these sessions across the year, and shout out to those of you watching this recording back after. Now, as always, the chat feature is open, so if you have questions during this session, please feel free to send those our way. We will try to have some time at the end to answer those questions, and if we don't get a chance to get to those, I'll be sure to get those in the email we send out afterwards. So without further ado, I'm going to send it over to Anne-Marie and our guests for today to get us going.
Hi, so I'll just do a quick intro of myself. I'm Anne-Marie Wills. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Leverage Lab. And we are absolutely obsessed with the idea of transforming your customer data into profit. John?
Yeah, John French. I guess I'm CEO and owner of French LLC. It says it right there. Many of you know, and many folks that have joined the webinars I've known personally. And I would say I kind of represent the view of the publisher part and how that reality lives within everything that we're talking about. And also being the last one of the year, I want to thank Anne-Marie and Danielle and the whole team. It's really fun working with Leverage Lab, and it's a great time to be here. And you're going to be hearing some announcements about good things happening now into the first quarter. So,
Rob?
Super. Anne-Marie, thank you for having me back on again. It's great to be here. Rob McLaughlin from London, United Kingdom, representing the European continent here. And yeah, it's great to be here. Look, everything that's been most exciting in my career has been orientated around leveraging first-party data, whether publisher or brand side, and all the deep thinking and great work that we do with Leverage Lab. Just yes, great to be having these discussions with you.
Thanks for being here. Awesome. So as always, just very briefly want to give you a background on Leverage Lab for those of you who don't know us. So Leverage Lab, we are a revenue partner to B2B and B2C media companies. We also work with a number of brands, but what we really focus on with our publishing and media partners is driving net new revenue by leveraging the rich audience data that you have, your first party data. So we bring a whole suite of solutions, including pre-built infrastructure, pre-built campaign programs, sales training, enablement, a whole suite of reporting and analytics that showcases the high value data that you have. We're here to get you into new revenue really fast.
sounds great. Okay, I'm going to cover the agenda as we have in the past. And this is not so much an agenda, but kind of an overview, not only of the webinars up until now, but we're going to talk about in the next probably 28 minutes. And in 2024 insights and industry shifts, we talked a lot about that, where the advertising is going, where audience is going. I'll say once again, if you're in the C-suite, please fund your audience development people and what they need to do to keep you competitive. I also think about the Growth Lab kind of roadmap going into next year, and we're going to talk about this, but the takeaway here is we say first party data is non-negotiable in 2025. What that means is if you're not doing it, it's already getting too late. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then maintain relevance. You know, I've said that in all of these webinars from the publishing standpoint, but I think about the webinars, and I think they were all great, and hopefully we've heard that they're very helpful. But there's a couple of ones that I think are particularly highlighted. Anne-Marie's going to go through it, but basically a B2B identity crisis, and I'll cover that at the end of the webinar. But who are we, and how do we use our data, and have we changed very much? And then finally, it was in the last webinar, I think, or the one before, elevating sales strategies. We introduced Larry, the digital sales rep, who got his clock cleaned by a really smart media buyer when she knew what she needed to get to, and Larry had no idea because he was selling quantity over quality. And if you have a chance to revisit that, I'd strongly recommend it, because I think, unfortunately, it was probably represented the most realism of sales calls that are going on today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Emery and we'll jump into it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the arc of what we've covered over the past year. What we really intended to do and what our purpose was to highlight some of the things that we see as challenges for B2B publishers specifically. And we have a really strong point of view about this. If you caught our NASCAR slide, you know now that we work with dozens of B2B publishers across many dozens of industries. And we see some consistent themes. We see some things that are really, really important for our B2B publishers to think about. And so we really intended to bring our point of view around these really specific important themes. And the first thing that we covered was really helping people to sort of understand the conversation around third-party cookies, and really demystifying it is one thing, but we really endeavored to explain it. So that's something that I think is a really high value piece of content to sort of revisit. And Rob and I are going to have a little discussion about it, and sort of where are we now and where are we going as it relates to that third-party cookie, and that conversation that takes up so much energy and so much oxygen in the room. And then we're going to talk a little bit about B2B buying trends. And the reason that this is a critical piece of the conversation is that when we are, addressing our buying public, it's incredibly important for people to understand what the buyer's intentions are. Where are they coming from? How are they engaging in the buying process? And where do you fit in that buying process? So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then elevating sales strategies, like how are we addressing the conversations that we have with our buyers? We see and we hear on a much, much more frequent basis a really deep need from buyers, from the B2B brands that are buying advertising from our partners, a deep need for more insight, for more partnership around data, for a deeper, richer connection to you because of the meaningful insights that you have within your ecosystem. Intelligence is the currency here. It's not how many eyeballs can you connect. So we'll talk some more about that. And then supercharging first-party data was really a conversation around the pieces of technology that are available today to really help us connect with our first-party data, to enrich what we know about those people, to deliver those meaningful insights and all that value back to our advertiser and create these really, really deep and intrinsically valuable relationships. And then lastly, like John was talking about, we've posed the question, are we having a bit of an identity crisis here? Are we trying to do too much? Are we getting away from our roots? Are we losing sight of the thing that is intrinsically valuable about the B2B media space? So those were the topics that we covered. And we're going to just kind of do a quick little dig into each one of those today, because in our point of view, the future is no different. What we have been talking about is really, on the precipice, on the cutting edge of what is happening in this industry. So a lot of what we've talked about in the past is going to be extremely relevant in the future. So as we go into 2025, the series that we'll create will continue to dig into some of these topics and give you more value around them. So our first conversation here, I'm going to pull Rob in, tagging you in. If you want to go ahead and put the rest of the slide up there, that would be great. Thanks. So, we've talked about third-party cookies in a technical way. We've talked about them in a more conceptual way, and we've talked about them in terms of how they impact business. But Rob, I really feel like we need your input here. You speak for the brand side as well as publishers, and you've built your whole business around activating first-party data. Tell us what you think the story has been and what the story will be.
Like the last 4 or 5 years, what an incredible amount of ambiguity both the publishers and brands have had to deal with regarding addressability and these third-party cookies, these identifiers, which in a lot of cases powered large parts of the industry on both sides, for since the dawn of the the advertising driven internet. And then yeah, for the last 4 or 5 years it's been called into question, and we've had some big unknowns. But probably needless to say for most of you joining today, but the story has tightened up, and we know how it's finishing. We know that even if the big beast in the room being Google and Chrome, even if they are going to give conceptually a life to third-party cookies, it's not going to be the life which their third-party cookies would have wanted. It's going to be a very restrictive one. The user's in control. Essentially, well, I couldn't have put it better than as Leverage Lab put it here. Yeah, third-party cookies are done, and they're going to be killed by the consumer making their decision in the browser to not be tracked, right? And 24 definitely, I think, has driven out a lot of the unanswered questions. I think for publishers and brands, there's maybe what we might call like a reality crunch. So like there's been a lot of excuses for the last few years to not have your addressability solution sorted. What do I mean by that? We've known that third-party cookies aren't going to be the solution. Fundamentally, I think we all have heard, and those who are at the forefront know that first-party data is what unlocks the actual value. And even if there are additional opportunities, first-party data is where you should be starting and where you should be building your most defensible strategies from. And yeah, I mean, just to wind up that point, I think people find themselves broadly in one of 3 categories. So, and Anne-Marie, I know you guys are working with some many publishers who are at the absolute forefront of this and managing to leverage first-party data to be able to do this. And they've spent several years understanding how they're going to transition from a reliance on third-party cookies to something else, and they've been able to serve their media buyers, and that with credible solutions which are provable. There are others who are still figuring it out and still maybe making big promises to their clients, but are the reality is going to be proven out in the coming quarters, and probably will massively impact their revenues in 25. And there are those who have completely neglected it. I would just say, finishing like starting point to that, I would say I don't know which one I'd choose to be, because the most advanced have invested a huge amount and they're in a great spot. The middle ones, they're coming of age. But I don't think it's a terrible story for those who are behind, because they get to learn from all of those who've gone first. And the fast follow is probably actually quite an exciting place to be for those guys too. But everyone's going to be dancing to the same tune in 25.
Yeah,
I
just want to double. That's so great. I was just going to say, I really want to double click on what you said about like, the dawning of 2025 means like ambiguity's gone. Like we have our answers, we can stop. I don't know how many times you've heard it, Rob, but I've heard it a lot where people are like, hey, we're just gonna see how this plays out. Like, we don't really believe that, it's going to happen, that Google's going to make that decision. Well, now we know. They didn't. They left it up to the consumer.
Yeah, I mean, I really think, reflection, has been important. I mean, I spent my life in this space, and I wouldn't have been able to make the calls for how it was going to play out. But also, I don't think there are very many prizes for calling like what was the windy snakes and ladders path we were going to take. Fundamentally, though, most of us were pretty confident that it was going to wash out, with first-party data being the most powerful asset in the media industry, and here we are. Yeah,
there's a couple of things there, Rob. I love the phrase publishers are hitting reality. That's it's a great way of looking at it, especially going into next year. And the other thing is, at least from my perspective, the way Google decided or not decided, I think makes it a little confusing, because it's almost like, well, the pressure's off. but it's not. As we said, you said people are making the decision in the browser, and advertisers are forcing the publishers to be more. So it doesn't make any difference what the heck, excuse me, Google said or didn't say. But basically, the reality is still going there. So I would, to publishers, I would strongly caution not to take what happened this year with Google as a license to not go down this road, because it's inevitable.
And
Yep.
you know what, John, like, even if we take the last few days, right, and say, yeah, we've just said Google and what Google are going to do with Chrome, okay? But I tell you what, we now know, it's very unlikely that Google is going to be the one who decides what is done with Chrome. And yeah, it's that monopoly, duopoly. Yeah, obviously a brilliant business, but like it's the blend of Google's advertising business with their browser business, which has motivated them to keep the third-party cookie as something which is useful in the future. But when the advertising business isn't connected with the browser business, well, there's going to be far, far, far less. And anyway, and I know Anne-Marie talks brilliantly about this. It'll be the consumer that decides, and the consumer's not going to choose to have third-party identifiers.
Yeah, they've already proven that with Apple. So yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. That was such great insight. So as we kind of touch on the next topic, it was really about, hoping to learn more about buyers and how buyers work, how they make the decisions that they make, how they work together in teams within the organizations that our advertisers are seeking to connect with. And there were some eye-popping, very recent stats that came out from a study by 6sense. And for those of you who know 6sense is an intent data platform and data set that's licensed into lots and lots of ABM tools and solutions that your brand buyers are using. And they essentially said the average size of a buyer group is 11 people, 11 distinct individuals within an organization, all coming at that buying process from different points of view. So that is a complex story right there. How do we start to think about that? The complexity of that is baked into how you leverage your data. 3 to 5%. This is a stat that I've seen go down considerably over the years, but you used to say that about 10% of the buyer market is in market at any given time. Now we're seeing statistics like 3 to 5% are considered in market. So showing those intention signals that lead to buying behaviors. And then now this is another stat that's gone way up, but we would see that about 70% of buyers prefer to work with somebody that they know. Now we're seeing 90% of buyers are coming in predisposed to purchase from a vendor that they already know. So if you're the challenger brand or you're the competitor brand, how hard do you have to work in order to overcome that challenge? So, these are really important stats that we're seeing, and they signal really significant shifts in the way that buyers behave. And if you're not a student of this as a sales leader or as a product leader within a B2B media organization, then you're really missing the key data that you need in order to make the decisions that you need to make about what products and solutions you offer.
Yeah, I think these these numbers are eye-popping, and I was thinking about this the last couple of days since this is all put together. A couple of things there. One, you think of 11 people. There is a perception out there that public, and I'm a publisher, right? So I'm as guilty as anyone in the past, but publishers have pushed the idea that we go to the decision maker. Well, the decision maker is spread out of 11 people, so it's a much wider group. So how do you capture them? The second thing is the 3 to 5. That really surprised me. I thought it was a little bit higher than that. I thought it was probably 10%, like you said, 15%. So the window has become much smaller of when people are in an active buying mood. The 90% didn't surprise me as much, although that's pretty high. The point is, I'll open question to publishers today. If you know these numbers are true, and they are, and you go to your advertisers, and maybe you don't show them the stuff, but you know how this is happening in your marketplace, how could you think of going out and buying a list of 10,000 people, third party, unknowns, and throw these big cannonballs like that? But what you really need to do is surgically hit these people. And so the idea, and I got to tell you, and Rob, after seeing this, and I'm not too dramatic on this, after seeing these numbers, I'm amazed that even third-party lists even exist if that's the case, because they're so vanilla, right? As opposed to this is where you need to go. So I think there's going to be a continued big challenge in 2025, but it's a new year and it's an opportunity to embrace all of these technologies and knowledge. And I think also, Emery, what you said, especially if you're in product or sales leader, I would really familiarize myself with these numbers and the dynamics behind them. Because, like I said, go back to Larry, the digital sales rep. He was throwing all kinds of ideas around quantity, and the buyer, being smart, said, "I don't want that. I want to find the 50 people who are going to be actively buying, blah blah blah." And that's how the world's changed, and that's why all of these tools are needed.
Great. So, we touched on this idea of sort of, pardon me, supercharging what you're doing with first party data. I mean, I think most publishers would say, yeah, we have a first party data strategy. We're collecting it. We use it for our owned and operated, solutions. Most everybody's using them in sort of an off channel way to connect their buyers with their advertisers with their audiences in other platforms. But I think at the end of the day, what we're seeing with the buyer is that they are asking for a lot more connection to the data that you have. We talked about in the webinar things like data clean room environments where an advertiser can literally connect with a publisher in a privacy safe environment that's fully protected to gain insights about really basic stuff like how well your audience is engaging with their content or their advertising. Really at the end of the day, it's pretty basic stuff that they're asking to get from you. It really does, though, require that the first party data house is in order. So, this conversation, I know in the B2B space, data clean rooms are kind of a new conversation, but they're a very present conversation in the brand world. I mean, maybe Rob, you could speak to a little bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the brand world and in publisher side, like we all need to look first to our own data and not just well, it is the data, but it's like what makes our product, whether it be leads, whether it be larger sort of targeting lists and audiences, what makes what we have special and not commoditized. And because if anyone's asking for, sure, where is the volume going to come from, but also where's the value, where's the margin going to come from? It's going to come from the fact that you have, as a publisher, say a niche, really exciting, deep opportunity to engage with an audience, and the insights that you're able to give about that audience are more insightful than those which could be got on the open market. And to the stats earlier, there's perhaps a smaller and smaller number of people who are in buying mode, and that means the numbers of hot in market leads may be smaller. So what we know about them, so that we can contact them and speak to them in the right way, is that's where the value is going to be, and that intelligence is. Yeah, and we call it first party data, but that intelligence is all squirreled away in that first party data. The information that the publisher collects, the information when someone registers, the information where they're listening closely to the behavioral signals for those buying signs, and it's I'd say it's making sure that publishers can pass on that those rich intent signs to advertisers. And yeah, for sure, clean rooms are increasingly clean rooms or data collaboration platforms, which can be all kinds of things, can be tech, can also just be simple ways of working with the existing stuff that you've got, are a brilliant way to start to flow that insight in an actionable way back to the advertiser, where they're going to be able to realize the value.
Yeah. I feel like I need to get a tattoo on my forehead that says intelligence equals currency. Like that is like we say it a lot here. I'd have to get it backwards though for the
Well,
webinars.
I've regularly thought like the only thing worse than not having the insight is having the insight and not being able to take action on it. It's
Yeah.
it's like to be stuck, sort of pinned to the ground and know that if I press the button, the good thing will happen, but I'm not able to press the button, even though I know, that's even more frustrating, and it's that last mile. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Great point.
Wonderful.
Okay,
Awesome.
one of our webinars we did on B2B identity crisis, and Danielle added the first step is admitting there was a problem. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. It's the beginning of a lot of step process, which many of us know the meaning of. But we dropped in this great quote from good friend Andy Clerman, who's the CEO of Active Interest Media, and losing sight of building communities and serving them with quality content and derivative products and services is at risk here. And I think that's a really important point. And what's at risk here is not being able to do all those things he's talking about here because you haven't developed your audience, you haven't gotten the insights into your audience and how they consume and what they're consuming and all of that. And he said, I've not seen media companies successfully pivot to lead generation data agencies. Brilliant point. And I've heard a lot of my discussions within the C-suite in B2B, a great confusion. I've even had a couple of published CEOs say to me, I don't know, some days I wake up, I feel like I'm running an ad agency. It's not all I have this like insatiable demand for leads and leads and leads, but my business is going down. My digital business is actually declining on a revenue basis. Why does that work that way? So that will be also, I think, a continuous theme as we talk about these things in 2025. Who are media companies? Who are B2B companies? And more importantly, what are we supposed to do every day? And I know that's kind of fundamental and not being a wise guy, but I think there's still a lot of confusion out there, and we want to help.
Amazing. So just to kind of sum up, as we think about 2025, I think, Rob and John and I have all kind of said a bit of the same thing, which is like the path that we were on in 2024, it's still our path. It all still matters. And I think, one thing that I would hope that, people could take away is that, like specifically the B2B buyer trend stats, like I was really trying to point out that they're not getting better. They're like working further into they're working more toward the need for really deep, rich first-party data that you can share and deliver insights from to your advertiser partners. So it's still about doing all the things, gathering and enriching your data, really thinking about how can you help your advertisers have an always-on sort of full funnel approach to what they do. If I just want leads from you, that is a very bottom of funnel strategy, and it's not taking advantage of everything that you're there to do, and being able to show them that those engagements are really impacting the audiences that they want to engage with. I mean, that's what we're talking about being able to do. And Rob, I would love your insights on this as well as we think about, going into 2025.
Well, yeah, I think it's good news for publishers. The rules are clear. Yeah, those rules being that what you know about your audience, that is the highest value currency in the land, and that's very exciting. And I think the truth will out regarding buying leads from from lead generation companies, not publishers. Lead generations are not publishers. You will find some which may present as publishers. They're not publishers. Publishers are creating unique content which is created for niche audiences, and thanks to the work done over the last few years, they listen carefully to the behaviors that happen across that content and profile in a really nice and consented way those audiences, so that when advertisers come calling and want to have deep insight into who these audiences are and who might be buying and why they're buying, then that first party data can be surfaced in a super shareable and safe way. And that's where the most exciting commercial opportunities are. You don't want to be in a commodified lead generation market. You want to be serving up unique insights about unique audiences. That's where the most exciting commercial deals are going to be happening.
Absolutely. And how we do that is by elevating what we're doing from a reporting standpoint, from an insights delivery standpoint, how we surface those engagements, all of that intelligence and insight is really, how we manifest that on behalf of our advertiser partners. Awesome. So
Right.
I think we've just got a few takeaways, right, Don?
We do, and I'll go through these kind of quickly because we're going to bring it in at around 30 minutes, which I think we're most proud of because time is valuable. So the first one is first-party data is non-negotiable. I said this earlier. I don't think there's anything I could say other than that. There's a strong belief in this webinar, but also amongst your advertisers. Believe me, they're coming to that conclusion. Audience quality over quantity, which I talked about, and again, not much more to say there, but it's going to become more important next year. Here's the deal. It seems sometimes I'm like kind of beating up publishers, but I don't mean to do that. It's more like want to tell you where the minefields are. But publishers hold the advantage. You do. The brands still need you. They still need the content. They still need what you do. And in fact, when the imposters, the third-party vendors, I call them imposters, probably not nice, but they do. Rob, I couldn't agree with you more. They do come across sometimes as publishers, but they're not. So that's a great opportunity to publishers because you have the ecosystem, you have the names, you spent the money to get those names. And then real-time engagements drive smarter decisions. That's a no-brainer. If you have someone who takes an action, puts their hand up, goes to a webinar, registers for something, that shows intent. And the more you can learn about that intent and then put them in an audience group that can be sold to your advertisers, the better off. And then adapt and lose relevance. Again, common theme with me and all of us actually. But and I'm glad, Danielle, I'm glad you dropped that in. Content is still king. We just spent 30 minutes talking about technology, and at the very end, we're mentioning content. And you know why? Because quality content has to be a given by a publisher before you can do any of these other things. And I would say, cash is king, content is king, and will be for a long time.
Amazing. Anyone have any other final points to wrap up this wonderful webinar?
Just excited to see everybody in 2025 for a whole new set of Growth Lab webinars.
Amazing. Thank you, Rob, for joining us. And as always, thanks, John and Anne-Marie, for leading such a fun and interesting webinar experience for us this year. Thank you all and have a wonderful day.